how the system works. That's not good. The truck can't make it up the hill. What happens when you live on volcanoes? What I was saying though is that you can't help be spiritual life. You're connected with nature. And I think even those of us who are not spiritual, I think the more time you spend in nature, pondering, some of the big questions that you may have in your own head, then I think you get to a place of peace because you begin to realize it's pretty amazing that the waste product of this tree right here is beneficial for me. My waste product is beneficial for it. It's a perfect symbiosis. And then when you think about mitochondria and all the stories that we've already talked about, it basically reverse all the processes of photosynthesis. That's the reason why, or underpins why, this parasitology between plants and us exists. And if you can ask the question, why do these relationships exist? And that's when you begin to realize that everything in the cosmos is decentralized. And the most decentralized part, I think, of science is the science of light. Light is the most complex thing that's out there, and it's kind of ironic that every single religion, at least that I study, light is a big part of its story. And again, none of their religions ever solved the recipe. My opinion, neither has science. And I think the ultimate search for spirituality is going to be found probably in the next 50, 100 years if the government doesn't pollute the new science of quantum biology, where people are out there, looking at all these fundamentals that I've shared with you. Right now, that ball game is it's the first inning, and so far the leadoff hitter is still up. It's a 1-2 count. That's how early the game is.
I got to tell you something before we wrap. I saw a podcast with a psychologist who observed schizophrenic patients in a mental hospital. And first thing he thought was that the voices that people hear in their head are not hallucinations, but are rational personalities. And the second thing he said was that the schizophrenics are all afraid of when the sun goes down, because that's when the voices get louder.
It's true. And that's the thing about quantum biology that's interesting. And I already gave you the answer why that happens. When melanin hits the skin, it really controls those 4 atoms. Those 4 atoms control the light channel. What is schizophrenia in the frontal lobes? It is the most chronic, chaotic release of dopamine. Dopamine is an aromatic amino acid. I should say it's made from aromatic amino acids, which absorb UV light. Okay, remember those 3 analogies I gave you? How the outside affects the inside. So here's another. So dopamine is controlled by that aromatic amino acid. So what he effectively has told you is a 4th layer of how the outside controls the inside, even when the system has short circuits in the frontal lobes. They know that they're matter when they're in the sun. The problem is they don't know what gave them the short circuits to begin with.
So there's no pharmaceutical solution here. It's not some chemical.
No, it's not a chemical imbalance. It's actually a wiring diagram in the mitochondria. It allows the mitochondria, both frontal lobes through that radial nucleus, to shoot very chaotic. Like if you looked at the dopamine spikes or you looked at the EEG spikes of a schizophrenic, you would see the most chaotic thing you ever saw. Like most people understand like depression and suicide, that's a low dopamine state. That's not as much chaos. That's what happens in the frontal lobes. Schizophrenics are exactly the opposite. Again, run with dopamine, except now the dopamine is uncontrolled and it spikes constantly. Well, the interesting thing is when they're in the sun, the spiking goes down. When they're in the darkness, it goes absolutely bonkers. Well, what does that fundamentally tell you? Based on the story I told you, this has got to go to some issue of controlling those atoms in the mitochondria. Jack was talking about iron, copper, manganese, molybdenum. That's exactly what it is. And the reason why, what's the common tie for those 4 atoms? From the GOE, they're all transition atoms. They all have D-shell electrons. D-shell electrons are very, very interactive with EMF. So let me tell you now a spiritual story that ties this. I think you'll like it. If you're a physicist, do you know what causes a supernova or a star to blow up? When the core of the star gets filled with iron, that's atomic number 26. Do you know why it happens? Because the EMF made from the star interacts with the D-shell electron that blows it up. That's exactly what happens in schizophrenia. That's what causes the same problem. Now, what do we call that process in biology? It's called ferroautosis. Okay? I expect you to know it. I expect most of the people to know it. But why do I say it to you, Carl? I want you to understand that physics is the fundamental science of biology. Biology is not fundamental. And I just explained to you how a blown up star creates a supernova. The same thing is happening to the neurons in a schizophrenic's frontal lobe. When they lose control of iron in their brain through polarized light, that's where schizophrenia comes from. That's where the nuclear weapons blow up. And then in that, how shall we say, field of Gaza, you still have to have the ability to function. And what, even in Gaza, as bad as it is, when the sun comes out, those people tend to do better. What does that tell you? It goes back to Genesis. Let there be light. The problem is, no one's teaching them, how to use it properly. And do I believe that somewhere down the road, 50, 100 years, when people look at some of my work after I'm dead, they're going to go, Jesus, this guy figured a lot of this shit out. We all thought he was crazy. And it turns out he wasn't crazy at all. He was looking at the process of 4.6 billion years in evolution that controlled the process of how light from the outside controlled the inside so that we could be normal, not schizophrenic, not brain damage, not a sexual deviant, not fat, not a person that needs Viagra, not a person whose hair falls out as hypothyroidism. You understand? Like, no one has a deficiency of pharmaceuticals. People have a deficiency of light on this planet because of the choices they made, how they live. And when you tell people it's this simple, they argue with you because they can't fathom it's correct. But Carl, that's why if you go to my house right next to the here, on the wall is a big rhinoceros, full size, that's gold. Why is it there? I don't have to teach rhinoceros quantum physics or quantum biology. They know exactly what to do with Africa. Okay? They don't have frontal lobes that allow them to change their environment. We do. There lies the difference. That's the reason that God or evolution had to make it this simple. That the outside controls the inside. Because when you do that, when you live outside, rhinoceroses, leopards, lions, monkeys, they get a little bit harder. We don't. Instead, we blow people up in Gaza so that we can control their land and take their oil. That's the history of humanity. We are a warring people. Why? Because for most of human history that's recorded, that's what humans have done. Because they don't live like a rhinoceros. I know that a lot of the American Indian tribes have actual rituals to welcome the sun coming up, rituals and prayers and so on. These people who live according to Mother Nature. They're the last humans on the planet that really got it right. And then what's the story of that? The white man that no fellow came in and destroyed because they thought they were savages. Who's the real savage? See, it depends on your perspective. And, here's the funny part. What controls perspective? Dopamine. Go figure that out. See, when you actually see it from the quantum biology perspective, you start to go, Jesus, everything that's in our history books is really written from this altered dopamine perspective. Correct. And I'm telling you the same thing right now. But the thing is, you don't come to these thoughts until you're out in the sun. And I would love to tell you that I had a lot of this laid out in my head when I was 15, 20, 25, 30 years old. No, it really became obvious to me between the ages of probably 40 and 65. And what have I done through that process of my life? Do podcasts like this. I write Patreon blogs. I write books to explain to people the basics of how all this stuff works, so that you can make sense of what's printed in the New York Times, what's printed on Twitter, what's going on, in France, what's going on in Afghanistan.